Greetings, YouTube. The Doctor is in. Dr. Urius Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going to talk about False Life, and we're going to talk about the Legacy version. We're going to talk about the 2024 version. We're going to talk about the changes. We're going to ask, are those changes enough, or were they not enough? We're going to give it a grade. We're going to talk about class interactions, all that. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or a comment. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I've got another video out. All right, here is the Legacy version of False Life. It was a first level spell. It took an action, verbal, somatic, and material component. It lasted for an hour, which I never thought was enough. Previous version of this spell lasted longer from previous editions, and essentially you cast the spell's necromancy, of course. You cast the spell, you gave yourself 1d4 plus 4 temporary hit points for the duration. That was never enough. For a first level spell, I mean, it is a first level spell, but you were getting 6, maybe 7 temporary hit points at the most for an hour. Not a lot. You could upcast this spell. You got 5 additional temporary hit points for each spell slot above 1. So if you cast it at second level, instead of getting 6 or 7, you got 11 or 12. And to be honest, that's worth like maybe a hit. Maybe. First level, that might save you from getting knocked to dying, but it was never really super great. I originally gave this a B. I'm still going to kind of hold on to that. I'm not completely set in that, but I'm going to stay with the B from what we gave the Legacy version. So let's take a look at the new version, the 2024 version, and what changed. So still first level spell, still one action, still range of self. I think it would have been better if they would have changed the range to touch, so you could give it to somebody else. Still verbal, somatic, material component. Still necromancy. Now you gain, and it's instantaneous. So now it's 2d4 temporary hit points. Instead of 1d4 plus 4 temporary hit points, it's 2d4 temporary hit points. And you'll notice it's a duration of instantaneous because we've got a new kind of definition of temporary hit points. So they're lost first, of course, and they last until you finish a long rest. So now these actually do last quite a while. So that's good. They added a D4. Is that enough? Probably not. I don't think that's even close. So on average, you're now, instead of getting 6 or 7 temporary hit points, you're going to get 9 on average. And of course, you can use higher level spell slots. And is it, another question you have to ask, is it worth it to use a higher spell slot? Maybe for a second level spell, now you're getting 14 temporary hit points. Your third level or higher, that's not great. You might, I think a third level character, if it takes 14 hit points of damage, that's going to be close, if not pretty much putting them at dying. I don't know if I would use a third level slot on this. That's 24 temporary hit points on average. That is kind of stretching it. So that is not, I think, the best use of a third level slot. There are much better third level spells you could be using. So we're still giving this a B. I'm really stretching to kind of justify a B for this spell. They did change the duration from that really horrible 1 hour to essentially you have these until you take a long rest. They did add enough. I don't think they added enough. I really don't. Or I don't think they didn't change the temporary hit points you get for casting at higher levels. I think that should actually be increased so that you get some more. So it kind of justifies using that higher level slots. So there are a lot of different classes that can use this. We've got sorcerers, wizards, artificers, grave domain clerics, Death Domain Clerics, the Undead, and the Dying Warlocks. Now, we had Sorcerers, Wizards, Artificers, Death Domain, Grave Domain, Blood Domain, which isn't a thing, Shadow Domain, Circle of Shadows, the Undying, and the Undead. So some of those were like Matt Mercer specials. So I actually think the Abjure, and this is the new Abjure, goes well with this. The Arcane Ward is not temporary hit points, but it is like hit points in like a force field around you. So adding temporary hit points into this makes you a little bit more beefier. Maybe the temp hit points take one of the hits before your Arcane Ward starts getting whacked. The Sorcerer, so extending a spell is not really going to do anything anymore because these last now until you take a long rest. You could quicken it, but again, you could just cast these at the beginning of the day and they're going to be there forever. And you can't really empower it because they don't do damage. It is a self spell, so you can't do a distance spell. And you can't twin it. So a lot of that stuff doesn't really work, even though a sorcerer could use it to kind of protect themselves a little bit. I think it's actually not bad with the Artificer. It's another set of temporary hit points they can get for, say, the Artillerist or the Armorer. The Armorer does get its defensive field, but that defensive field is temporary hit points. Now, False Life is a little bit more, so it's an extra source of temporary hit points, and the Artillerist has the Eldritch Cannon, which can do the Protector, which also gives temporary hit points, so it's another source of those. The Grave Domain Cleric gets it as a spell in their list of spells, so they don't really get any other sources of temporary hit points other than that, so that is a thing. The Death Domain Cleric gets it as a spell in a spell slot. So, again, this class doesn't really get temporary hit points either. The Warlock, the Undead Warlock, when they do the Form of Dread, they get temporary hit points. You get this as a spell in your spell slots on the spell list. So it could be another source of temporary hit points. And then finally, the Undying Warlock has this Spare the Dying and this Defy Death thing, which isn't temporary hit points. They get False Life as a expanded spell. So that, it's not an extra source, it's like the only source. So in essence, this spell got a little bit better, but I don't really think it got better enough or changed enough to get a different grade. Still giving it a B. I'm really kind of stretching to give it a B. I think it's more justified in getting a B now because it doesn't have an hour time limit, and it got a little bit more, but, I'm still kind of stretching for that. All right, that is what I have for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.